What does the milk in your fridge, the bread in your pantry, and the tires on your car have in common? They all have best before dates. What? How can that be possible? Is that true? Let me explain as we talk tires. When shopping for tires, should you be asking the retailer how fresh the tires are in his store? Should you ask him, when did these tires roll out of the factory? When were they made? Well, truth be told, if you're buying tires from a reputable tire retailer, that shouldn't be an issue. Plus, your goal shouldn't be to buy a tire that was made maybe just a few weeks ago, because that's simply unrealistic. The reason why was nicely explained by Mike Metesic, Territory Manager for Ontario and Manitoba at Hankook Tire Canada, when I interviewed him about best before dates on tires for an article that was published in Tire News magazine. Now here's what he said about consumers shopping for fresh tires. They don't realize that many tires are made overseas, and you have to factor in the travel time. So that's point number one as to why it's almost impossible to buy a tire that was made maybe just a few weeks ago. Many tires are made on the other side of the planet, and it takes time for them to make their way over to North America. And when it comes to travel time, you have to keep in mind that tires aren't shipped directly from the factory to your home. You're not buying a made-to-order tires like you might buy a made-to-order laptop with exactly the right amount of RAM or a specific video card in it. Those things are put together on the spot when you order them, and they're shipped straight to your home from the factory. Tires aren't like that. Tires that are made overseas travel by container ship to North American distributors in Canada or the USA. That can take a long time. They're not sent on a flight overnight by FedEx or UPS. Then once they arrive at the distributor's warehouse, usually many months before they're going to be needed. So for example, winter tires might arrive in the spring or summer of that same year. And they'll sit in that warehouse until your local retailer orders them for his store. So from the time they roll off the assembly line in Asia, for example, to the time that they arrive at your local store, well, that could be many months. Mike Metesic explains it this way. He says, if you order winter tires as a distributor, for example, you're not getting them in October or November. You're getting them months earlier, and those tires may have been manufactured months before that. So, if your goal is to buy what you perceive to be fresh tires, hot out of the oven, so to speak, it's just not going to happen. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean you should be buying tires that are very old either. For that same article, I interviewed Keith Wilcom, project engineer, Bridgestone America Tire Operations, who told me the following. He said the Japanese Automobile Tire Manufacturers Association has put guidelines together. Bridgestone has adopted their guidelines, which state that after a tire reaches 5 years of age, it should be thoroughly inspected by a tire professional for any signs of aging or anything that may require the tire to be replaced. After 10 years, we recommend a tire be replaced, even if the tread has not worn out. So So although fresh out of the oven tires are not realistic, tires do have a best before date. And that best before date is 10 years from the date of manufacture. Now, does that mean that your 10-year-old tires are going to self-destruct the next time you get into your car? No, but to err on the side of caution and to be safe, it would be wise to follow these guidelines as set out by this association and as endorsed by major tire brands. And let me add a comment by Brad Fraser, Customer Engineering Support, Passenger Light Truck Tires from Michelin North America, who was interviewed for that same article. Here's what he said. At the 10-year mark, even if there is service life in terms of tread depth left in the tire, we recommend it be changed out. Over the life of the tire, we can't predict the exact conditions it was exposed to and how it was maintained. That's why at the 10-year point, we recommend the tire be taken out of service. Now notice that he mentioned that one of the key factors in this equation is the conditions the tire was exposed to during its lifetime and how that tire was maintained. And part of that has to do with how the tires may have been stored during their lifetime. In short, tires that are properly stored, and you'll find a link to a video about tire storage in the show notes below, they will last longer. But like I said before, if you're buying your tires from a reputable tire retailer, you shouldn't have to worry about the age of the tires they're selling, because it's not likely that their stock has been on their shelves for 10 years. For a certainty, if they're a good retailer, they're turning over their stock way more often than that. However, let's say you're buying used tires from a second-hand retailer, or maybe someone's advertising a really good deal on Kijiji, or maybe your neighbor's getting rid of his old car, doesn't need his old tires anymore, and he offers to sell them to you for a great price. Well, those tires may look pretty good, and in some cases they may even look brand new, but they could have been sitting in the guy's garage or shed for many years. Now, they might even have the original stickers on them, making them look like they were just purchased, just came out of the store. But for whatever reason, they've been sitting in some guy's garage for almost a decade, or maybe even more. So this, I would argue, is when you want to know when those tires were made. That's when the date of manufacture needs to be ascertained. So before you fork over your cash, take a look at how old those tires are. That's the only way to determine if you're getting a good deal or whether you're just buying a problem. Now, you'd also want to know the age of your tires if you've owned a vehicle for a very long time and for whatever reason haven't ever swapped out your tires. In that case, your 10 or 15-year-old vehicle might be due for a new set of tires, even if there's tread life left in the set you currently own. Now, for those of us who drive a lot, this seems almost impossible. But I recently noticed this particular situation with my own father-in-law. He has an 11-year-old sedan. He doesn't drive much, so he's had the same set of all-season tires on his car since he bought the vehicle. Now, the only reason I discovered this is that I noticed very fine cracks in the rubber recently. And when I found out that his tires were over a decade old, I got him to replace them right away. So it does happen. You can find vehicles that have the original set still on them. So whether you're buying used tires or whether you're like my father-in-law who has never replaced his tires, you'll want to know how old those tires are. Now, where do you find the date of manufacture? As you might imagine, it's stamped right there in the sidewall. I'll let Keith Wilkham from Bridgestone explain. Here's what he told me. He says the date of manufacture is part of the DOT number that's on the sidewall of the tire. It appears in a week, year format, which means that the number 4715 would mean the 47th week of the year 2015. Now let's take a look at a couple of examples just so we make sure that we know what we're talking about. So here we have the first tire. There's a DOT number, 1917. So that was made in the 19th week of the year 2017. And the next tire over here, DOT number again. What's the number? 4919. So the 49th week of the year 2019. So this tire is a little bit newer, a little bit fresher, but that's where you find the DOT number, and that's how you find the age of the tire. So to recap, do tires have best before dates? Yes. 10 years from the date of manufacture. Now, where do you find the date of manufacture? Well, on the sidewall. Look for the DOT number, and remember that it's printed in a week, year format. Should you shop around for tires that are fresh? Well, no, that's unrealistic because of the way the supply chain works. When is the date of manufacture a real concern? When buying second-hand tires, or when you've owned a vehicle for a very long time and you've never changed your tires. Now, how can you extend the life of your tires? Store them properly, and if you haven't seen the video about tire storage, I encourage you to do so. The link is in the show notes below. And remember, just like your milk, just like your bread, tires do have a best before date. It's hard to believe, I know, but they do. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you the next time we talk tires.